Hiya, so I understand you want me to look at terminology, the biopsychosocial model and critique of theory. So let me just have a read through these. So I would, yeah, okay. And have a reference for predominant neurotype. See, I'm just wondering about this section on terminology. Rather than all of these bullet points, I think you'd be much, much better off having a short bit of narrative as to why you would use identity first, for example. Things like autist or autists, that's fine, and us, we, that's fine. ADHDers, that's fine. Yeah, those ones are all fine. I'd be tempted to do those as footnotes as well, to be honest, just to save yourself some word count, because I know you'll struggle with those. But it is important to refer to why you use identity first in relation to the literature. Same with predominant neurotype, and then of course the concept of a spectrum. I would suggest actually it's not. I think the autism constellation is the 3D oh no, actually no, you've noticed that, so that you've got a new version of the spectrum. So just be clear that while this is that this is your model, but traditionally the autism spectrum is not understood in terms of a 3D prism. So I would suggest you have a bit of narrative about what the autism spectrum is generally speaking regarded as in a 2D linear, A to B kind of image, but that you understand it in a different way. I think that makes a lot more sense. And then identify that it aligns with the concept of an autism constellation, and then refer probably to Caroline Hurst. So again, I think this could be a footnote. And again, rather than, I would have a section on functioning labels and why functioning labels, many people would reject them, but actually referring to intellectually high functioning makes sense. And I would merge all of these into a section on functioning labels and the problems with them. The rest of these labels, you don't need to identify what you mean. I said have a footnote. I think certainly us and we include that, but in terms of ADHD, as those with ADHD, I don't think you need to include, like, that's going to be obvious when it comes up in the narrative itself, in the same way that when you write severe learning disabilities, it's obvious what it is. Again, I would have that as a footnote. That's fine to keep in. And I would have this as part of your section on models of disability, because that comes under the sort of social model rather than the medical model of disability. So you want me to have a read of the biopsychosocial model. So that's all great. I would reference this section here as well. So who writes is increasingly, I would suggest, I know it's technicality, but anyway, you don't need to write understanding and evaluating autism theory. That goes into your reference list at the end. So you just have the date and the page number there for Chown. I would have references for these. So have a reference in terms of sensory issues, social interactions, and then the coexisting conditions have references for each of those. And I would have a reference to autistic communication as well. And again, I would have references for each of these. And a reference to hyperempathy and meltdowns. I put demonstrates rather than proves, just because in academic writing, proof has a, and in research, proof has a different kind of connotation, really. So I've put demonstrates. And I absolutely have references for these. Yeah, and again, I would have references for those. I totally agree with you, though. You could yeah, this is less relevant specific to the biopsychosocial model. And actually might be better off later on in the assignment when you're having that discourse around females. And then you want me to read, I think, the criteria against which there is to be critiqued. Now, Echoe, this is actually where you can save some words, because you can literally have this whole section, uniqueness, universality, and the lived experience, and autistic authenticity, literally just in one paragraph, and just say that's what, just and refer to Regenta and Mitchell or me. I think that's probably much more useful when it comes to this section. So I wasn't expecting you to critique the models of disability against uniqueness, universality, and the lived experience and so on. That these were there for you. They're intended for you to utilize to then subsequently critique autism theory. So I would, and I understand you've got this kind of in-depth critique of models of disability, but I don't think you've got enough word count to do that. So I would just have one small paragraph identifying the criteria that you're going to use to critique theory, and then go on to critique the dominant theories of autism. I hope that makes sense. I'll just have a brief look at the opening of this as well. So I agree with this. I think that's relatively self-evident. I would go straight into a section on your main theories. So literally just start off with theory of mind. What is theory of mind? And go on to critique theory of mind against those criteria. So uniqueness, universality, and the lived experience. So I think what you're writing here, so say for example this paragraph, you can absolutely delete that, because that's going to become evident as you go through the critique of theory. So I think what you're writing is absolutely correct. I'm not saying it's not correct. It's just the relevance of it specific to this assignment. So, and I can understand why you're putting it in, but actually because of the restriction on the word count, I think it's, you're much better off going straight into your critique of autism theory. Okay, so I hope that all makes sense. If you've got any queries based on this feedback, please do let me know. In the meantime, well done for getting so much done. Make sure you make use of studiosity as much as is possible to try and figure out how to reduce your word count while at the same time meeting the assignment criteria. Cheers!